It was a warm afternoon when Lena decided to take a short walk through her neighborhood. The air smelled faintly of rain, and the sound of distant traffic mixed with the chirping of birds. For most people, it was just another ordinary day, but for her, every step meant strength. Every breath meant courage. Lena had been fighting cancer for almost a year. The chemo had taken her hair, her energy, and some days even her confidence. But it hadn't taken her spirit. She still smiled at neighbors, still baked cookies for the kids next door, and still found reasons to say thank you for another sunrise. Her husband, Daniel, always said she had a heart tougher than any Marine he ever knew. And that meant something, because Daniel himself had served in the Marines for more than 10 years. Now retired, he worked at a local auto repair shop, living a quiet life with Lena in a small, peaceful community outside the city. To strangers, they seemed like any ordinary couple, but behind that calm life was a story of survival, love, and silent strength. Lena's illness had changed everything. The treatments had been rough. There were days when she couldn't even get out of bed, when her body ached from head to toe and food tasted like metal. But Daniel was always there, cooking for her, cleaning, sitting by her side even when she was too tired to speak. He never let her feel alone. Every afternoon, Lena liked to go for a short walk to keep her mind clear. The doctor said a little movement would help her recovery, but for her it was more about peace. She liked watching kids play in the park and hearing the wind rustle through the trees. It reminded her that life was still beautiful even when it hurt. That day she wore her favorite scarf, a soft blue one Daniel had bought her on her birthday. It covered her head completely and she felt comfortable in it. She smiled at a woman watering flowers on her porch, waved at a little boy riding his bike, and kept walking. But as she turned the corner near the small shopping strip, she noticed a group of young men sitting by the bus stop. They were loud, laughing, and throwing small stones at a street sign. Lena didn't pay much attention. She simply kept walking. But then she heard something that made her steps slow down. "Hey, look at her," one of them said, loud enough for her to hear. "Looks like she's hiding something under that scarf," another voice laughed. "Yeah, maybe she's some kind of nun or something. Or maybe she's just weird." Their laughter followed her down the sidewalk. Lena tried to keep her head high, pretending not to hear, but her hands trembled slightly. She'd faced cruel looks before. People whispering at the grocery store, staring too long at her head, or giving her pitying smiles. But this laughter felt different. It wasn't ignorance. It was mean. When she reached home, she closed the door gently, leaned against it, and took a deep breath. Daniel was in the kitchen fixing something under the sink. "Hey, you're back," he said, smiling as he wiped his hands on a towel. "How was your walk?" Lena hesitated. "It was fine," she said softly. "Just a little tired." Daniel studied her face for a moment. He could always tell when something bothered her, but she quickly changed the subject, asking about dinner. She didn't want to worry him. He had already carried so much for her, too much. That night, while lying in bed, she thought about those voices again. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe they were just kids being stupid. She told herself that not everyone understood what people went through. Not everyone had compassion. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that those laughs weren't just harmless. There was something cruel behind them. The next few days went on as usual. Daniel went to work early and Lena stayed home, writing in her journal and doing small chores around the house. Her hair was starting to grow back slowly, tiny strands soft as feathers. She smiled when she saw them in the mirror. It wasn't much, but it was progress. That weekend, Daniel decided to take her out for lunch at a small diner they used to visit before her illness. It was their special place. Nothing fancy, just a cozy little spot where everyone knew their names. Lena wore a bright yellow dress, her scarf neatly tied. When they walked in, the waitress greeted them warmly and brought their usual order without even asking. For a while, everything felt normal again. They laughed about old memories, shared stories, and even joked about Daniel's terrible dancing at their wedding. Lena's laughter filled the room. It was the kind of laugh that made people turn their heads and smile, too. But later that afternoon, when they stopped by the grocery store to pick up a few things, the same group of young men appeared again near the parking lot. They were leaning against a car, smoking and talking loudly. Lena froze when she saw them. Daniel noticed the change in her expression instantly. "What's wrong?" he asked. She shook her head quickly. "Nothing. Let's just go inside." As they walked past, one of the men made a comment under his breath. Daniel heard it this time. His body stiffened immediately, but Lena gently held his arm. "Please," she whispered. "Don't." He looked at her for a moment, his jaw tight, but he nodded. They went inside, did their shopping, and left quietly. That night, though, Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the way those men looked at his wife. He'd spent years defending his country, facing real danger overseas, and now he was back home where the battle was supposed to be over. But somehow, hate had followed them here too. He turned toward Lena, who was sleeping peacefully beside him, and brushed a hand over her scarf. "No one's going to hurt you," he whispered softly. "Not ever." The following week, Lena went on her walk again. She didn't want to live in fear. She believed that staying strong meant not letting others take away her courage. So she walked the same path, even though her heart beat faster when she approached that bus stop. To her surprise, the gang wasn't there that day. Instead, an older man was sitting on the bench feeding pigeons. She smiled and greeted him, and he smiled back kindly. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" he said. "It is," she replied. And for a moment she felt peace again. But as she turned to leave, she noticed graffiti on the nearby wall. Someone had scribbled hateful words, ugly, cruel words. Her chest tightened. She didn't know if those same boys did it, but it made her feel small, unwanted. She walked home quicker that day, wiping away tears before Daniel could see them. When she reached home, she tried to act normal, but Daniel could see the sadness in her eyes. He asked what was wrong, and this time she told him everything: the laughter, the stares, the whispers, and the graffiti. Daniel sat quietly for a long time after she finished. He didn't speak right away. Then he said, "You should have told me sooner." "I didn't want to make it a big deal," she replied softly. "People like that, they just want attention. I don't want to give it to them." Daniel took her hand. "You've been fighting cancer for a year. You've faced more pain than most people could imagine. You don't deserve to fight this kind of hate too." Lena smiled weakly. "I know, but I can't fight everything. I just want peace." He kissed her hand gently. "Then that's what I'll make sure you have." Over the next few days, Daniel kept an eye out whenever she went walking. He drove by the store on his lunch break just to check the area. He didn't tell her, but he felt uneasy. Something about that group didn't sit right with him. He'd seen that kind of arrogance before, the kind that grows dangerous when no one stands up to it. One evening, as he was leaving work, he noticed the same group of young men hanging around the back alley near the grocery store. They were laughing loudly, tossing bottles into a trash can like it was a game. He recognized one of them from before, the tall one with a red cap turned backward. Daniel stayed in his truck for a moment, just watching. Then he started the engine and drove off. He wasn't going to confront them, not yet. But he made a quiet decision that if they ever crossed his wife's path again, he wouldn't let it slide. At home, Lena sat by the window, sipping tea and staring at the fading light. The sun dipped low behind the trees, and she whispered a small prayer under her breath. Not for herself, but for peace, for kindness, for the world to be softer than it was that day. When Daniel came in, he placed a hand on her shoulder and smiled. "Dinner smells good," he said. She smiled back, pretending not to notice the tension in his eyes. They both knew the world wasn't perfect, but as long as they had each other, they believed they could get through anything. What neither of them knew was that soon, their quiet life was about to be tested in a way neither of them could imagine. The next time Lena went out alone, things would take a turn that would change both of their lives forever. The sky was gray that evening when Lena decided to go out. It had rained earlier, and the streets still glistened under the streetlights. The air was cool and smelled like wet earth. She wrapped her blue scarf tightly around her head, took her small shopping bag, and told Daniel she'd be back soon. "Do you want me to come with you?" he asked, looking up from the newspaper. She smiled softly. "I'll be fine. I just need to grab some milk and bread. It's only 5 minutes." Daniel nodded, though a small part of him felt uneasy. He watched her step outside, her reflection flickering in the glass door as it closed. Lena walked the familiar path toward the grocery store. The road was quiet except for the soft splashing of her shoes on the damp pavement. She loved evenings like this, cool, calm, almost peaceful. But she also felt something different this time. Maybe it was just the silence, or maybe her own worry lingering from the last time she saw those young men. When she reached the small store, the bright light spilling from the windows made her feel a little safer. She smiled at the cashier, a kind middle-aged woman who always greeted her warmly. "Evening, Lena," the woman said. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," Lena replied. "Just a little tired. You know how it is." "Take it slow," the cashier said with a wink. "You're doing great." Lena smiled and moved through the aisles, picking up the few things she needed. Milk, bread, a small box of cereal, and a pack of tea. She loved making tea before bed. It made her feel calm and warm inside. But as she stepped outside with her bag, the peaceful feeling began to fade. Across the parking lot near the old lamppost, she saw the same group of young men, 4 of them. They were standing close together, laughing loudly, tossing something back and forth, maybe a bottle. Lena froze for a second. Her heart started beating faster. She thought about turning back, but it would only draw attention, so she lowered her head and walked quickly toward the other side of the parking lot, hoping they wouldn't notice her, but they did. "Hey, it's the lady with the scarf again," one of them shouted. Her hands tightened around her bag. She kept walking, pretending not to hear. "Too good to say hello?" another voice called. Their laughter echoed in the empty parking lot. Lena's steps quickened. She was only a few feet from the street now. Just a few more steps and she'd be out of there. But then she heard footsteps behind her, fast ones. "Wait up," someone said, laughing. She turned slightly and saw one of them walking toward her. He wasn't smiling in a friendly way. His grin was wide, mocking. "Hey, we just want to talk," he said. Lena's throat went dry. "Please," she said quietly. "I don't want any trouble." "Trouble? Nah," he said, stepping closer. "We just think it's funny you walking around like that." "What's under the scarf?" Before she could move, another boy joined him. "Yeah, come on, take it off. Don't be shy." Lena took a step back. Her hand trembled as she held onto her bag. "Please," she whispered, "why are you hiding? You think you're better than us?" One of them sneered. She shook her head. "No, I'm just going home." They laughed again, and one of them reached out as if to grab the edge of her scarf. Lena stepped back sharply. "Don't touch me," she said, louder now. Her voice echoed, but the street was empty. No one came out. The few passing cars didn't stop. One of the boys said, "Relax, we're just playing around," but his tone wasn't playful. It was cold. Then, from the corner of her eye, Lena saw a man standing by the door of the grocery store. He was holding his phone up. She didn't realize it then, but he was recording. The boys noticed him too. "Hey, what are you looking at?" one of them shouted. The man quickly stepped back, but his camera kept rolling. That moment distracted the group just long enough for Lena to slip away, running across the wet pavement toward the street. She didn't stop until she reached the next block. Her chest hurt, her legs trembled, and tears blurred her vision. When she finally reached home, she dropped her bag on the porch and leaned against the door, trying to catch her breath. Daniel opened the door immediately, startled. "Lena, what happened?" She tried to speak but couldn't at first. Her voice broke. "They were there again," she finally whispered. "Those boys." Daniel's face hardened. "What did they do?" "They followed me," she said, shaking. They tried to touch me. I ran." He stepped forward and gently held her shoulders. "Did they hurt you?" "No, I got away." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Sit down," he said quietly. "You're safe now." He went inside, grabbed his phone, and called the police. Lena sat on the couch, still trembling. She didn't want to cause trouble, but Daniel wasn't going to let this go. When the officers arrived, Lena explained what had happened. They took notes, asked questions, and promised to check the area for security cameras. One of them said, "If you remember any faces, we can do a lineup later." Lena nodded, though she wasn't sure she could. Everything had happened so fast that night she barely slept. Every small sound made her flinch. The rain outside felt louder, and even the soft ticking of the clock made her uneasy. Daniel stayed awake beside her, holding her hand. In the morning, the police called. They said someone had posted a short video of the encounter online. It showed part of what happened in the parking lot. Lena walking away, the boys following, and one reaching out toward her scarf before the camera cut off. Daniel watched it once, his expression turning dark. "I'm going to find out who they are," he said quietly. "Daniel, please," Lena said, her voice trembling. "Let the police handle it." He looked at her and nodded slowly, but deep down he knew he couldn't just wait. He'd seen too many things in his life to stay idle while someone hurt the person he loved most. Later that day, Daniel visited the grocery store himself. The manager knew him well and agreed to show him the security footage. It clearly showed the same group of boys hanging around outside just before Lena came out. The manager said, "They've been here before, always causing trouble. I've warned them to stay away." Daniel asked for copies of the footage and gave them to the police. But one of the officers sighed and said, "We'll do our best, sir, but unless someone can clearly identify them or they make another mistake, this might take time." "Time?" Daniel repeated quietly. "My wife is afraid to leave the house." The officer looked uncomfortable. "I understand, sir. We'll keep you updated." When Daniel returned home, Lena was sitting on the porch looking out at the rain again. "They said it might take time," he told her. She nodded slowly. "I figured." For a moment they sat in silence. Then she said softly, "You know what hurts the most? It's not the words they said. It's that no one stopped them. People saw, but no one helped." Daniel reached over and took her hand. "Not everyone's brave," he said. "But I am, and I promise you this isn't over." Over the next few days, the video started to spread online. People began to comment, asking who the woman was, what had happened, and why no one helped. Some defended her, saying she was a cancer patient and deserved respect. Others just expressed outrage. Meanwhile, Lena tried to go about her days as usual. She read books, watered the plants, and watched old movies with Daniel in the evenings. But every time she looked out the window, she felt uneasy. One afternoon, she went to check the mail and saw a car slow down near their driveway. Inside were two young men she couldn't see clearly, but one looked familiar. Her heart skipped. She turned and hurried back inside. Daniel noticed her pale face. "What's wrong?" "There was a car," she said. "I think one of them was in it." That was the moment something shifted in Daniel. He had spent years following orders, keeping his anger controlled, staying disciplined. But now his instincts were taking over. Someone had crossed a line. That night, he sat at the kitchen table long after Lena went to bed. He stared at the dark window, remembering all the times he'd promised her she'd be safe. He'd kept that promise through sickness and sleepless nights, and he wasn't about to break it now. He picked up his phone and called an old friend from his Marine days. "Hey," he said, his voice calm but cold. "I need some help finding a few people." The next day, the investigation would take a new turn. And soon, the men who thought they could get away with hurting a kind, gentle woman would learn that they had messed with the wrong person's wife. The morning light crept through the curtains as Daniel sat by the kitchen table, staring at his phone. He hadn't slept much. Lena was still resting upstairs, her breathing soft and steady. He didn't want to wake her. She had been through enough already. On the table lay a small notebook filled with names, notes, and addresses. They weren't official police records, just bits of information he'd gathered from people around town. A cashier from the store had told him that one of the boys worked at a nearby gas station. Another man said he'd seen them hanging around an abandoned lot near the highway. Daniel wasn't planning to take the law into his own hands. He just wanted to make sure those boys didn't hurt anyone else. But deep down, he also wanted something else, peace for his wife. After making a few calls, Daniel met up with an old friend, a former Marine named Tom. They hadn't spoken in a long time, but when Daniel explained what happened, Tom didn't hesitate. "You did the right thing calling me," he said. "We'll handle this the smart way." Tom worked as a private security consultant now. He knew how to dig for information and how to do it without breaking any rules. They started by checking social media. Within an hour, they found a few profiles that matched the faces from the video. The boys had even posted pictures of themselves hanging around the same grocery store parking lot. Daniel clenched his jaw. "That's them," Tom nodded. "We'll hand everything over to the police, but let's make sure it's solid first." Meanwhile, Lena tried to focus on healing. She didn't like seeing Daniel so serious all the time, but she knew he was only trying to protect her. Sometimes she caught him staring out the window, his face distant, his thoughts somewhere far away. She wanted to tell him to let it go, but part of her knew he couldn't. That week, she received a call from the police department. They said they were making progress. "We've identified a few suspects based on the footage," the officer said. "We just need to confirm details with witnesses." It was a small relief, but still, every time Lena went outside, she felt a shadow of fear. Daniel insisted on driving her everywhere, even if it was just a short trip. She didn't argue. One evening, while they were watching TV, The local news played a short segment about an incident involving a cancer patient and a group of local youth. They blurred Lena's face in the footage, but Daniel's hands tightened into fists as the clip replayed the scene from that night. The reporter said the police were still investigating, and the suspects were believed to be connected to other harassment reports. Lena looked down at her hands. "I wish they hadn't shown that," she whispered. Daniel turned off the TV. "People need to see it. They need to know what's happening." "I just don't want to be known for that moment," she said softly. "I don't want pity. I just want normal again." He took her hand gently. "You'll have that again, I promise." A few days later, Daniel met Tom again near the old parking lot. They stayed in the truck, watching from a distance. "That's them," Tom said quietly, pointing to a group of 4 young men laughing near the corner store. Daniel recognized them instantly. The tall one in the red cap, the one who had stepped toward Lena that night. He'd never forget that face. "Let's get this on record," Tom said, pulling out a small camera. "The police will need proof they're still hanging around." They recorded the group for a few minutes, capturing them loitering, shouting at passing cars, and acting out. When one of them started spray painting a wall, Tom whispered, "That's enough. That's vandalism. We can report that too." Daniel nodded, his eyes still fixed on them. "I just don't get it," he said. "Why hurt someone who's never done anything to you?" Tom sighed. "Some people hate what they don't understand. You can't reason with that." They left soon after and brought the footage to the police. The officer who received it recognized the suspects right away. "We've had complaints about these same kids," he said. "This helps a lot. Thank you." For the first time in days, Daniel felt a small weight lift from his chest. Maybe now something would finally happen. Back home, Lena was sitting by the window writing in her journal. She looked up and smiled faintly when he walked in. "You've been out a lot lately," she said gently. "Just helping the police with some things," he replied. She studied him for a moment. "You've been helping more than that, haven't you?" He hesitated, then sat down beside her. "I just want to make sure they can't hurt anyone else." Lena reached over and touched his hand. "You've already done so much for me. Don't lose yourself in this." Her words hit him deeply. He realized how tired she looked, how much courage it took her just to smile every day. He didn't want his anger to make things harder for her. That night, he made a silent promise to focus on justice, not revenge. A few days later, they were called to the police station to give formal statements. The officer in charge thanked them for their patience. "We've gathered enough evidence to bring charges," he said. "We're moving forward." Lena nodded quietly, her hands clasped together. Daniel could see her trying to stay calm, but he knew the memories were still raw. On their way home, Lena looked out the window and said softly, "Do you think people ever change?" Daniel thought for a moment. "I think some do, but others only change when they have to face what they've done." That evening, something unexpected happened. A local journalist reached out asking if Lena would be willing to share her story. At first, she refused. She didn't want attention, but after talking with Daniel, she changed her mind. "If sharing this makes people kinder or even just more aware, maybe it's worth it," she said. The next week, the story went online. It wasn't dramatic or exaggerated. It was simple, honest, and human. It talked about Lena's illness, the attack, and Daniel's quiet determination to stand up for what was right. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of messages came in from strangers offering love and support. One message stood out. It was from another woman who had faced harassment after losing her hair from chemo. "Your story gave me courage," she wrote. "I thought I was alone." When Lena read that message, she cried softly. For the first time in a long while, those tears weren't from fear. They were from relief. The police later informed Daniel that the suspects were now officially charged. They wouldn't be able to bother anyone for a while. Still, Daniel stayed alert, checking the locks twice before bed, driving Lena wherever she needed to go. His instincts as a Marine never truly faded. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lena said quietly, "You know, I used to think strength meant fighting back, but now I see it can also mean forgiving or moving on." Daniel looked at her. "You really think you can forgive them?" She smiled sadly. "Not today, but maybe someday, because I don't want them to take more from me than they already have." He nodded. "You've always been stronger than you think." For a moment they sat in silence, watching the sky turn shades of orange and gold. The air was calm again the way it used to be, but deep down Daniel knew this wasn't the end. There were still court dates, still memories to face, still nights when Lena would wake up shaking from the sound of laughter in her dreams. But they would face it together. Later that night, as Daniel checked his phone before bed, he received a message from Tom. It was a short text that read, "The video's everywhere now. People are standing with you guys. You did good." Daniel set the phone down and looked at Lena, already asleep. He brushed a strand of hair from her face and whispered, "You're safe now." But even as he said it, he knew his fight wasn't just about safety anymore. It was about fairness. It was about making sure no one else had to go through what Lena did. In that moment, he made another quiet promise to stand by her not just as a husband, but as a protector of what was right. The next chapter of their life was about to begin. And though they didn't know it yet, their story would soon inspire people far beyond their little town. The next morning, Daniel woke early as usual. Lena was still asleep, her breathing soft and calm. He brewed some coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the small stack of papers and photos he had collected over the past few days. Each one was a piece of evidence, a small clue leading to the young men who had hurt his wife. He knew the police were moving forward, but Daniel didn't want to leave anything to chance. He had learned long ago that waiting for things to happen was not always enough. Sometimes you had to act. Later that morning, Tom arrived. "Morning," he said, carrying a laptop and a small folder. "We've got everything organized now. The police will have no choice but to act." Daniel nodded. "Good, let's make sure it's airtight. I don't want them walking away because of a technicality." Tom opened the laptop and began reviewing all the footage, screenshots, and social media profiles. Together, they cross-referenced names, addresses, and incidents. The more Daniel saw, the more frustrated he became. These boys weren't just mean. They had a history of harassing people in the neighborhood, and yet nothing had stopped them before. "They've been careful but careless in the end," Tom said. "Posting videos and pictures online is what finally gave us what we need." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I just don't understand how someone can be so cruel. A woman fighting cancer, and they attack her? It's like they have no humanity." Tom nodded silently. He knew Daniel's anger was not just protective, it was personal now. By noon, they had compiled a full report, complete with timestamps, photos, and witness statements. Daniel handed it over to the lead detective. The officer took the files with a serious expression. "This is solid," the detective said. "We can move forward with arrests soon. Thank you for doing this." Daniel left the station feeling slightly lighter, but he knew the real work wasn't over. There was still the court case, still the possibility that these boys could lie and manipulate their way out. He had seen enough of the world to know that justice sometimes needed a push. When he got home, Lena was in the living room, knitting quietly. "How did it go?" she asked softly. "They've got everything," Daniel said, sitting beside her. "The police say arrests are coming soon." She smiled faintly, but her eyes showed relief more than joy. "It's strange," she said. "Even knowing they might be caught, I still feel uneasy." Daniel nodded. "I know, but it's normal. What they did, it leaves a mark. We just have to heal and keep moving forward." Over the next few days, news of the case began to spread. The journalist who had contacted Lena earlier ran a follow-up story, showing the police were taking action. The video of the attack, blurred to protect her identity, circulated online. People shared messages of support, some offering to help in small ways, like rides for Lena or donations to her treatment fund. One morning, as Daniel drove Lena to her appointment, he noticed a small crowd gathered near the grocery store. Banners, posters, and signs were being placed on the sidewalk. Curious, he pulled over. A woman approached. "We heard about what happened," she said. "We wanted to show support. People shouldn't have to live in fear in their own neighborhood." Lena's eyes filled with tears. She had never expected this kind of response. "Thank you," she said softly. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder. "See, people do care. More than you think." As the court dates approached, Daniel and Lena met with the attorney assigned to the case. The lawyer explained the charges: assault, harassment, and hate crimes. "The evidence is strong," the attorney said. "With the footage and witness statements, it's likely the prosecution will succeed." Daniel felt a mix of relief and determination. Relief because justice might finally be served, but determination because he knew he needed to be there every step of the way. The day of the first hearing arrived. Daniel sat beside Lena in the courtroom holding her hand. She was nervous, her hands trembling slightly, but Daniel squeezed them gently. "I'm right here," he whispered. The defendants were brought in, 4 young men, some looking nervous, some indifferent. They tried to avoid eye contact with the victims and the crowd, but their discomfort was obvious. The prosecutor presented the evidence carefully, showing video clips, witness statements, and records of previous incidents. Daniel watched Lena's reaction. She was quiet, holding herself together, but he could see the tension in her jaw. When the defense tried to argue that Lena had exaggerated, the prosecutor countered with the detailed timeline and multiple sources. Every lie they tried to tell fell apart in the face of the evidence. Outside the courtroom, a small group of community members had gathered. Some held signs supporting Lena and condemning hate crimes. The support from neighbors and strangers alike gave her strength she hadn't realized she needed. After the hearing, Daniel and Lena walked slowly to their car. Lena leaned on his arm. "I didn't expect so many people to care," she said. Daniel smiled softly. "You've always been kind to everyone around you. They see that, and they want to protect it too." In the following weeks, more details about the boys' past behavior came to light. Local businesses reported incidents where the same group had harassed customers or damaged property. The police now had a clear pattern. Daniel couldn't help but feel a sense of justice growing. He still worried for Lena and for himself, but he also realized that the community's support made the fight easier. One afternoon, he received a call from Tom. "They're nervous now," Tom said. "You've done everything right. The prosecution is solid. The boys know they can't hide." Daniel let out a quiet sigh of relief. "Good. They need to understand that actions have consequences." Lena continued her treatment, and slowly, life started to feel more normal. She walked with Daniel around the neighborhood, though they stayed cautious. Her hair was growing back, and she found herself smiling more often. The fear was still there, but it was smaller now, replaced by hope. One evening, they sat on the porch together, watching the sun dip behind the trees. "Do you think this will change things?" Lena asked softly. Daniel looked at her and nodded. "It already has. You've shown people that strength isn't just about fighting. It's about standing up even when you're scared. You've inspired a lot of people." Lena smiled faintly, feeling warmth spread through her chest. She realized that what had started as a frightening and painful experience was now something bigger. A story about courage, love, and the importance of standing up for what's right. In the days leading up to the trial, Daniel continued to support Lena in every way he could. He drove her to appointments, helped with chores, and even learned to make her favorite tea just the way she liked it. Every small act reminded her that she wasn't alone, and that love could be stronger than fear. The courtroom sessions were long and stressful, but each day, Lena grew stronger. She realized that she didn't have to face this alone, and that Daniel's presence gave her the courage to speak up and share her experience. Finally, the prosecution rested and the defense had no more arguments. The judge set a date for the verdict. For Lena, each day was a mix of anxiety and hope, but with Daniel by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. On the day of the verdict, the courtroom was tense. The 4 young men sat in their seats, looking uneasy. The judge read the charges, and then the decision: guilty on all counts. A wave of relief washed over Lena. She looked at Daniel, her eyes shining with tears. He squeezed her hand gently, feeling the same relief. "It's over," he whispered. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of supporters clapped and cheered. Strangers came up to Lena, offering hugs and words of encouragement. She realized then that even in the darkest moments, kindness and courage could prevail. As they drove home, Lena leaned against Daniel. "Thank you for everything," she said softly. "For not letting them win," Daniel smiled. "You didn't need me to fight for you. You've always been strong. I just helped a little." That evening they sat together on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of pink and gold. Lena felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. The fear and anger had faded, replaced by hope, love, and the knowledge that justice could be served. Daniel looked at her, a quiet smile on his face. "We did it together," he said. Lena nodded. Together. And in that moment, surrounded by the soft sounds of the evening, they knew that while life could be unfair and cruel at times, love, courage, and the support of those who care could make all the difference. The morning after the verdict, Lena woke up feeling lighter than she had in months. The sun streamed through the curtains, warm and gentle, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of normalcy. The fear that had followed her every step, the fear of being attacked again, of people looking at her with cruelty, was finally lifting. Daniel was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in his hands. He looked up when Lena appeared, smiling softly. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," she replied, her voice quiet but steady. He set his cup down and reached across the table for her hand. "How are you feeling?" She thought for a moment, then said, "Safe. Really safe." Daniel's expression softened. For months he had carried a silent burden, worrying about every step she took, every glance she received, every possible danger that could appear. He had always been vigilant, but now that weight was beginning to ease. "Good," he said. "You deserve that." After breakfast, they decided to take a walk through the neighborhood. It was a beautiful day, bright and calm, with the scent of flowers in the air. Children played in the yards, neighbors waved from their porches, and the small town felt alive and peaceful. Lena held Daniel's hand as they walked, feeling the warmth of his presence beside her. As they passed the grocery store, Lena noticed something new. A small group of people had gathered, holding handmade signs with messages of support for her and for anyone who had faced harassment or injustice. Some held flowers, others held small notes, written with words of encouragement and kindness. Lena stopped for a moment, overwhelmed. "I didn't expect this," she whispered. Daniel squeezed her hand. "People saw what you went through. They wanted to help. They wanted to say that hate doesn't win." Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude, not fear. She had felt small and alone for so long, but seeing the community rally around her reminded her that kindness and compassion still existed. Over the next few weeks, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Lena continued her treatment, but now she felt stronger, physically and emotionally. She walked more often, smiled more freely, and even began planning small projects for the community, like organizing a charity walk for cancer awareness. Daniel remained her steadfast protector and partner, but now he also focused on helping the community heal. He spoke at neighborhood meetings about safety, respect, and standing up against harassment. His calm, firm presence inspired people to take action, and slowly, the small town began to feel safer and more connected. One afternoon, Lena received a message from a local school principal. The school wanted her to speak to students about courage, resilience, and overcoming adversity. At first, she hesitated. She didn't want to be the center of attention or relive her fear. But Daniel encouraged her. "You've been through so much," he said. "Sharing your story could help others. You've already inspired people by just being yourself." Lena agreed, and the day of the talk arrived. She stood before a group of young students, her blue scarf neatly tied, her hands steady. She spoke, softly but with conviction, telling them about her journey through illness, fear, and the attack she had faced. She spoke about courage, love, and the importance of standing up for what is right. The students listened intently, their eyes wide and attentive. Many had never faced such fear or injustice themselves, but they understood the lessons she was sharing. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Lena felt a warmth in her heart she hadn't felt in a long time. Meanwhile, Daniel continued to support her quietly. He didn't seek recognition for himself. His reward was seeing Lena grow stronger and seeing the community become more aware and compassionate. One evening, as they returned from a walk, Lena paused near the park. The trees swayed gently in the evening breeze, and the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She turned to Daniel and said, "You know, I used to feel so scared all the time. But now it feels like everything that happened had a purpose. I'm stronger, and so are you. We're stronger together." Daniel smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. We've always been strong, Lena. We just didn't always realize it. Now we do. They stood there for a while, watching the sun set, feeling the calm and the peace they had fought so hard to reclaim. As the days turned into weeks, Daniel continued to keep an eye on the neighborhood. He checked in with the police, occasionally, ensuring the convicted men stayed away and that the community remained safe. The once frightening streets now felt lighter, filled with laughter and the quiet hum of everyday life. Lena also started to engage more with her neighbors. She joined a local support group for cancer survivors and found comfort in sharing her experiences with people who truly understood. She discovered that even though her journey had been painful, it also gave her a unique voice, one that could comfort, inspire, and protect others. One afternoon, Lena and Daniel were invited to a small ceremony at the community center. The mayor and several residents wanted to honor Lena for her courage and Daniel for his unwavering support. It was a simple gathering, but the warmth and respect in the room were palpable. Lena stood up to speak, her voice steady and calm. "I never asked for recognition," she said, looking around the room at the smiling faces. "All I wanted was to live my life without fear. But what I've learned is that courage isn't just about surviving. It's about standing up even when you're afraid and helping others do the same." The crowd clapped, some wiping tears from their eyes. Daniel stood beside her, holding her hand, proud but humble. He didn't need applause or praise. Seeing Lena's smile was enough. That evening, back at home, Lena and Daniel sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky. The quiet was comforting, a reminder of how far they had come. "Do you remember the first time we walked here after everything started?" Lena asked softly. Daniel nodded. "I remember. You were scared, but you kept going." She smiled. "And you were right there, always." "I'll always be there," he said. "No matter what." They sat together for a long time, talking about small things, sharing quiet laughter, and enjoying the simplicity of the moment. For the first time in months, the weight of fear and anger had lifted completely. They could breathe again. Over the following months, Lena's health continued to improve. Her hair grew back, her energy returned, and she found herself planning for the future again. She and Daniel even started a small community project, helping to provide safe spaces for people who had faced harassment or discrimination. The story of what had happened, the attack, the fear, and the ultimate justice, remained a part of their lives, but it no longer controlled them. Instead, it became a story of resilience, love, and the strength of the human spirit. One evening, as they sat together, Lena rested her head on Daniel's shoulder. "I can't imagine going through all of that without you," she whispered. Daniel kissed her hair gently. "You don't have to imagine. I'll always be here. And you?" He paused, smiling softly. "You taught me what true courage really means." They sat there quietly, letting the night surround them. The world outside was calm, the streets safe, and their hearts full of hope and gratitude. They had faced darkness, and they had come through it stronger than ever. The months that followed were filled with small joys, a picnic in the park, visits with neighbors, quiet evenings at home, and laughter that felt lighter and freer than it had in years. Lena continued to advocate for cancer patients and victims of harassment, her voice reaching further than she ever imagined. Daniel, always by her side, continued to be her protector, her partner, and her friend. Together, they had turned a terrifying chapter into a story of courage, hope, and justice. And on one quiet evening, as they watched the stars together, Lena whispered, "We made it." Daniel smiled, holding her hand tightly. "We did. And we'll keep making it. Together." For the first time, Lena truly believed it. Life could be cruel, but it could also be kind. And with love, courage, and determination, even the darkest moments could be transformed into a story of hope. Together, they faced the world again, not with fear, but with strength, unity, and the quiet power of knowing that love and justice could prevail. And in that small town, among neighbors, friends, and strangers who had stood beside them, Lena and Daniel found peace, safety, and the simple joy of living again.